whether it's really required to keep the fuel prices very low or very high, what should be the actual price which we should keep? The answer is actually a very complex one. And it really depends on the various factors such as the economic conditions of the country, the government policies, and the impact of fuel prices on different sectors of the economy and society. The rising prices of petrol and diesel actually impact people in several ways. The initial impact, of course, it will be felt by the people who own personal vehicles. On the indirect impact, as fuel prices go up, sales of cars and two-wheelers usually go down. This contraction in demand affects the automobile industry adversely. Apart from this, fuel prices have a cascading effect on business belonging to various sectors. It's because the cost of transportation and logistics starts to increase, and therefore their overhead costs for buying raw materials go up. As a result, their profit margins get reduced. Consumers also face the burden of rising fuel prices as it causes inflation rate to go up, and hence the prices of daily commodities such as vegetables, oils, plastic, rubber, etc. start going northwards. Very low prices can actually benefit consumers by reducing their transportation costs and increasing their disposable income, which in turn actually stimulates spending and economic growth. Additionally, the low fuel prices can help in reducing inflation and, of course, maintaining the price stability. However, you see, when the fuel prices are reduced, too much of reduction, if it happens, it can lead to several negative consequences also. Firstly, it can lead to an increase in demand for the fuel. People tend to use more, unnecessary or necessary, they'll tend to use more if the prices are too low. That can lead to shortages and supply constraints. And our country is heavily dependent on import and huge foreign exchange requirements. Secondly, low fuel prices can discourage investments in alternate energy sources and renewable energy, which are very important for the long-term sustainable development. Thirdly, low fuel prices can negatively impact the government's revenue. We have seen that, which can actually lead to decrease in public spending on very important social and development programs. The major stakeholders, as we discussed last time, the oil production and exploration corporations, followed by the oil refiners, followed by the OMCs, that is the oil marketing companies, followed by the dealers, and then the central and state government, and finally the users. Ultimately, when you fix up the retail price, we need to consider some benefit going to each of these stakeholders. Ideally, everything should be a win-win-win situation. Every stakeholder should get some part of a benefit. Refiners, they buy oil from the oil producing companies at huge cost, and they import oil from outside, adding a lot of duties, customs duty, everything which goes to the government. They incur expenditures on the fuel, losses, and then they need some reasonable margin also for building up great infrastructure. The central and state government also should get some earning to the exchequer, because the oil companies' contribution falls as one of the major contributions going to the exchequers. And finally, the users also should be benefiting. All these items should come at a reasonable price level to the users. And as we have seen in the price build-up, the base price is the price at which the OMC hands over the fuel to the dealers. So the base price should cover all those expenditures and the profit margins going to oil companies, the OMCs, the refiners, everything has to be incorporated in that. There are minor elements on the dealer commission and things like that. If you leave that aside, the major chunk of the price build-up comes from the excise duty and the VAT. Excise duty charged by the central government and VAT charged by the state government. The central and state tax on the petrol in India keeps on changing from time to time. It's because the governments revise their tax structure on fuels to maintain their revenues and also decrease pressure on the consumers. When GST was introduced in July 2017, 5 commodities, crude oil, natural gas, petrol, diesel and aviation turbulent fuel, were excluded from the ambit. The state taxes and the central taxes are replaced with GST. GST, the highest slab rate is 28% only. There could be substantial reduction in the fuel prices. If you turn back the clock a little and try to understand how oil was historically priced in India, starting from 1948, for the first attempt to regulate petroleum products came when government entered into an agreement with Burma Shell at that time, based on a value stock agreement. That is a cost plus formula based on an import parity price. After that, number of expert committees have been put in place to study, to review, to revise the petrol prices, diesel prices, and they came out with different methodologies. It kept on changing from cost plus to import parity, to export parity, to trade parity, again back to cost plus. You must have heard of the administrative pricing mechanism. Assured revenue, 12% post-tax return to the refiners on the net worth. But this was being questioned by different people. So different methodologies have been tried. You should try to understand this difference between import parity, export parity, trade parity and the cost plus. Imagine that if you are importing petrol from Singapore port, on the FOB port price, you add the customs duty, the shipment freight, the insurance, everything you add, you get the price at the port of Bombay or port of Kochi. From there, you need inland transportation up to the refinery. You add up everything, that is the import parity price of petrol at refinery gate. Export parity is, suppose you imagine that you are exporting the product, then you are exporting at the FOB price of Singapore minus the freight you incur for taking to the Singapore. So export parity price is much lower, import parity price is much higher, trade parity price is something in between, assuming that 80% of the product is imported and 20% is exported. So you take a weighted average of 80-20 ratio, you get the trade parity price. It has been proven that trade parity price would be one of the best possible solution to arrive at a reasonable price at the refinery gate, which can also ensure some profit margin to refiners. So government has to carefully watch the profits being made by the refiners, and also you can clearly measure the efficiency parameters of each refinery. Ensure that all the refineries and the oil production companies, based on the energy consumption, based on other parameters of productivity, they should be either penalized or they should be given the benefits to ensure that our refiners or oil production companies, they work with full efficiency. And you need not give a cost plus, assured return to them. And you need not fix up a trade parity price or something at the refinery gate to ensure that some margin goes to them. Ideally, we should open up the market. In the long run, we should open up the market. There should be a level playing ground. By judicially putting a duty structure, government can help to make our refiners good competitive refiners, good business entities. India has been experimenting with diversifying its source of oil and gas imports, creating strategic oil reserves, blending ethanol with auto fuel and ambitious electric mobility plan. However, these measures are yet to achieve a critical mass to have a positive impact on the energy prices in the face of massive surge in the global prices of crude oil, gas, petrol and diesel. The easiest way that government can stop fuel prices from rising is by cutting taxes on them and by taking less dividends from oil public sector undertakings. That will affect the income or the benefits coming to the exchequers, to the government. So they need money for infrastructure development, for social causes. Money to government comes only through direct taxes and indirect taxes. If they reduce taxes on petrol and diesel, somewhere else they have to add. So economists actually are of the opinion that you should try to tax the wealthy people. We have many billionaires in India today. So government should find methodology for taxing luxury items instead of taxing petrol and diesel more and more, because petrol and diesel is something which is going to affect inflation and day-to-day life of a common man. In fact, for petrol and diesel also, at some point of time, they thought of having two different prices, two pricing mechanisms, like a public distribution system for the poor, but that never works. It can trigger the deep-rooted corruption in the society. India has taken another big step by daily pricing revision and deregulation, but Indian petrol retail market still requires transition from this semi-regulated market to a totally free market.